The night sky above Tokyo's Deep Space Monitoring Station was unusually clear when everything changed. Dr. Sarah Chen sat at her desk, sipping her third cup of coffee. Her dark hair was tied in a messy bun, and her eyes were tired from staring at screens for 12 straight hours. It was supposed to be another quiet night shift, but at exactly 11:47 p.m., every alarm in the facility started screaming. "This can't be right," she whispered, adjusting her glasses as she looked at the readings. The numbers were unlike anything she had seen in her 15 years of deep space monitoring. Something massive was appearing just beyond Earth's atmosphere, and it was appearing out of nowhere. The phone on her desk rang. Before she could answer it, calls started coming in from other space stations around the world. Beijing, Moscow, NASA. Everyone was seeing the same thing. Sarah's hand shook as she typed commands into her computer, trying to get a better reading on the object. Dr. Chen, Tom Yang, her young assistant, burst through the door. His face was pale, and he was holding his tablet like it was going to explode. "The satellite images are coming in. You need to see this." He placed the tablet in front of her, and Sarah felt her heart stop for a moment. On the screen was something impossible. A massive battleship, clearly human-made, but more advanced than anything she had ever seen. It was at least 3 times the size of an aircraft carrier. With smooth black armor and glowing blue engines, the ship's design was both familiar and alien, like seeing a modern smartphone next to an old rotary telephone. As they watched, more images came streaming in. The ship's hull bore clear markings in English and Chinese. EDF Prometheus, Earth Defense Force, 2157. Sarah read the date several times, trying to make sense of it. 2157, more than 130 years in the future. "Get me a direct line to General Morrison," Sarah ordered, her voice steadier than she felt. "And someone needs to contact the UN Security Council immediately." The next hour was chaos. Military bases around the world went on high alert. News stations began broadcasting emergency reports. Social media exploded with pictures and videos of the massive ship, now visible to the naked eye, as a dark shape blocking out the stars. Sarah and her team worked frantically to analyze the data pouring in. The readings showed impossible energy signatures, suggesting technology far beyond current human capabilities. But what troubled her most was the temporal radiation surrounding the ship. It matched theoretical models for time displacement. "Dr. Chen," Tom called out, his voice shaking. "They're broadcasting." The message came through on all frequencies, in every language. The ship's commander identified himself as Admiral James Harrison of the Earth Defense Force. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of urgency. "To all nations of Earth, year 2024, we come from a future where humanity faces extinction. Our arrival may seem like a sign of destruction, but we represent hope. In 6 months, Earth will face a threat it cannot survive without our help. We request immediate contact with world leaders to prepare for what's coming." The monitoring station fell silent. Sarah looked out the window at the night sky, where the massive ship now hung like a new moon. Her scientific mind raced with questions, but her instincts told her something else. Something about this wasn't right. Her computer beeped with new data. The ship's energy readings were fluctuating in patterns that didn't match any known physics. Either this was truly advanced technology from the future, or... Sarah opened a new file and began documenting everything. If humanity was about to face a threat, they needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with, both from space and from their supposed future saviors. As dawn approached, military aircraft from various nations circled the Prometheus at a safe distance. The world held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the arrival of humanity's most advanced battleship might indeed be a sign of destruction, just not in the way everyone thought. She looked at the latest sensor readings again, noticing something strange in the temporal signature. Whatever this ship was, wherever it came from, one thing was certain: This was only the beginning of a story that would change humanity forever. 3 days after the Prometheus appeared, world leaders gathered at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The massive battleship had moved to a lower orbit, its dark shape now visible during daylight hours like a second moon. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the back of the emergency session, her laptop filled with data she still couldn't fully explain. Admiral James Harrison appeared on the giant screens above the assembly. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face that showed years of worry. His future military uniform looked similar to current designs, but with technology built into it that seemed almost magical. "I understand your fear," Harrison began, his voice echoing through the silent room. "But what I'm about to show you is why we risked everything to come here." He pressed something on his wrist, and the screens changed to show images that made people gasp. The pictures showed Earth, but not the Earth they knew. Cities lay in ruins. Massive alien ships filled the skies. The date stamp read August 15, 2024, just 6 months away. "They called themselves the Nexus," Harrison explained. "They came without warning. Our weapons were useless against their shields. In my timeline, humanity lost 7 billion people in the first week." He paused, letting the horror of his words sink in. "But now we have a chance to change that." Sarah watched the faces of world leaders as they saw their cities destroyed in these future images. Something caught her eye in one of the photos, a detail that seemed wrong, but she couldn't quite place it. She typed quick notes into her computer. Harrison continued his presentation, showing blueprints for defense systems that needed to be built. "The Prometheus carries everything you need: weapons, shields, and plans for planetary defense stations. But we need to start now. We barely have enough time." The Chinese president stood up first. "How do we know this isn't some trick? A way to make us give you control of Earth's defenses?" Harrison's face showed pain. "I lost my family in the first attack. My daughter was only 12. He touched a button, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a complete simulation of the alien invasion: ships appearing from hyperspace, energy weapons that cut through cities like paper, and strange machines that walked through streets capturing humans. Sarah noticed something else strange. She zoomed in on her own readings from the Prometheus. The ship's energy patterns had changed during the hologram display, almost as if it was using too much power for just a simple projection. The UN Secretary General called for an immediate vote. The world needed to unite against this threat, he said. They needed the Prometheus and its advanced technology. As leaders began to discuss the details, Sarah slipped out of the room. In a quiet hallway, she made a call to her old professor at MIT, Dr. Patrick Wong. "Pat, I need you to look at something," she said, sending him her data. "The temporal radiation from the ship, it's not consistent with time travel theories." "What do you mean?" he asked. It's coming from somewhere else. Not the future, but," she struggled to explain. A shadow fell over her. Sarah turned to find Admiral Harrison standing there, his face friendly, but his eyes cold. "Dr. Chen," he said, "your work monitoring our arrival was impressive. We could use someone like you on the defense planning team." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but kept her voice steady. "Thank you, Admiral. I have many questions about your technology. All will be answered in time," he said with a slight smile. "But now we must focus on preparing Earth's defenses. The Nexus are coming, Dr. Chen, and only together can we stop them." As Harrison walked away, Sarah looked out a window at the Prometheus hanging in the sky. The ship that had arrived like a sign of destruction now seemed to promise salvation. But as she studied her data one more time, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were all missing something important. The warning from the future was clear, but was it the whole truth? Sarah had 6 months to find out, before everything changed forever. 1 month after the Prometheus's arrival, the world was splitting apart. Sarah Chen watched the news from her new office at the International Defense Coordination Center in Geneva. On the screens, protests filled the streets of major cities worldwide. Some people carried signs supporting the future battleship, while others demanded it leave Earth immediately. "Another fight in the Security Council today," Tom Yang said, bringing Sarah her morning coffee. Her young assistant had followed her to Geneva, helping her investigate the mysteries surrounding the Prometheus. Russia is demanding their own access to the ship's weapons systems. The Americans refused. Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on her computer screen. Dark circles under her eyes showed she hadn't slept much. For weeks, she had been studying patterns in the Prometheus's energy readings, and something finally clicked. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her screen. "Every time Admiral Harrison shows those holograms of the alien invasion, there's a power surge in the ship, but it's not just using energy. It's like it's receiving something." Tom leaned closer. "Receiving? From where?" Before Sarah could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the building. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and security teams rushed past their office. "Dr. Chen." A guard appeared at her door. "Emergency meeting in the main hall. Admiral Harrison says it's urgent." In the main hall, hundreds of scientists and military officials gathered around a large holographic display. Admiral Harrison stood in the center, his face grave. The image showed what looked like a small spacecraft approaching Earth. "This scout ship was detected near Mars," Harrison announced. "It matches Nexus designs from our timeline. They're coming earlier than we expected." The room erupted in panic. Military commanders shouted orders into phones. Scientists argued about defense strategies. Sarah stayed quiet, watching Harrison carefully. "The Prometheus will intercept the scout ship," Harrison continued. "But this proves what we've been warning you about. Earth needs our defense systems operational now." Sarah noticed something odd about Harrison's reaction. He didn't seem surprised or worried about the scout ship. If anything, he looked satisfied. Later that night, Sarah worked late in her office, digging deeper into the data. Tom brought her dinner, but she barely touched it. "I think I'd figured it out," she said, pointing to complex graphs on her screen. "These energy patterns from the Prometheus, they don't match any known theory of time travel, but they do match something else." "What?" Tom asked. "Dimensional crossing." Sarah pulled up more data. "I don't think they're from our future at all. I think they're from a parallel Earth." Tom sat down heavily. "But why would they lie? Why pretend to be from the future?" Sarah was about to answer when her computer beeped. A message appeared from Dr. Wong at MIT. "Analysis complete. You were right. Check the background radiation signatures." With shaking hands, Sarah opened the attached files. The numbers confirmed her worst fears. "The Prometheus's weapons," she whispered. "They're not designed to fight aliens. The energy signatures match perfectly with..." A shadow fell across her desk. Sarah turned to find Admiral Harrison standing in her doorway, 2 armed guards beside him. "With human technology," Harrison finished for her. "Very good, Dr. Chen. I knew you were too smart to fool for long." Sarah stood up slowly, positioning herself between Harrison and Tom. "There is no alien invasion coming, is there?" Harrison smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, there's an invasion coming, just not the one we told you about." He looked out the window at the night sky, where the Prometheus hung like a dark star. "In our world, humanity learned that the multiverse was full of parallel Earths, some more advanced, some primitive. We decided to unite them. Under proper leadership, of course." "You're the invaders," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her fear. "We prefer the term unifiers," Harrison replied. "And now, Dr. Chen, we need to discuss what to do about your unfortunate discovery." Sarah's hand moved slowly toward her phone, but one of the guards raised his weapon. Outside the window, the Prometheus seemed to glow brighter, like a sign of the destruction it had truly brought to Earth. The truth was finally clear, but now Sarah had to find a way to warn everyone, if she survived the night. Sarah Chen's heart pounded as she faced Admiral Harrison in her office, The guards had their weapons trained on her and Tom, but her mind raced for a way out. She needed to warn everyone about the true nature of the Prometheus and its crew. Suddenly, real alarms began blaring throughout the building. Harrison's communicator buzzed urgently. "Admiral," a voice crackled. "Multiple objects entering Earth's atmosphere. They're not ours." Harrison's face showed genuine surprise for the first time. He turned to his guards. "Take them to holding cells. I'll deal with them later." But before anyone could move, a brilliant blue light filled the sky outside. Strange ships, elegant and curved unlike the harsh angles of the Prometheus, descended through the clouds. They were smaller than the Prometheus, but moved with incredible grace. "Impossible," Harrison muttered. "They couldn't have followed us here." Sarah saw her chance. While Harrison and the guards were distracted by the ships, she slammed her hand on the emergency lockdown button near her desk. Steel shutters instantly dropped over the doors and windows, separating her and Tom from Harrison and his men. "Override this now," Harrison shouted, pounding on the barrier. "Dr. Chen, look." Tom pointed at her computer screen. Messages were flooding in from around the world. The new ships weren't attacking. They were broadcasting a message to Earth in all languages. "People of Earth," a calm voice announced, "we are the coalition of free worlds. We've come to warn you. The Prometheus is not what it claims to be." Harrison's face went pale. He barked orders into his communicator, and in the distance, they could see the Prometheus powering up its weapons. Sarah quickly downloaded all her research to a secure server and grabbed Tom's arm. "There's a maintenance tunnel under my office. We need to get this data to the UN now." They crawled into the narrow tunnel just as they heard Harrison's guards breaking through the barrier. Above them, the first battle began. The Prometheus fired its massive weapons at the coalition ships, but they moved too quickly, their shields absorbing the attacks. "Look how they fight," Tom said as they crawled. "They're trying not to cause any damage to the cities below." Sarah nodded. "Unlike the Prometheus, which doesn't care about collateral damage, they're proving who the real threats are." They emerged in an underground parking garage and found a car. As they drove toward the UN building, the sky lit up with the battle. The coalition ships danced around the Prometheus's attacks, their own weapons precisely targeting only the battleship's weapon systems. Sarah's phone rang. It was Dr. Wong from MIT. "Sarah, are you seeing this? The energy readings from these new ships, they're using technology designed to protect life forms. Everything about them is defensive." "I know," Sarah replied. "They're trying to stop the Prometheus from conquering parallel Earths. We were wrong about everything, Pat. Harrison and his crew. They're the invaders from another dimension where humanity became the conquerors." They reached the UN building just as the Prometheus launched what looked like missiles. But instead of explosions, the missiles created strange rifts in the sky. Portals. "More ships incoming," someone shouted. Through the rifts came more battleships like the Prometheus, their weapons already firing. The coalition ships regrouped quickly, forming a protective barrier between Earth and the new threats. Their leader's voice came through again. "People of Earth, you must choose now. The Prometheus claims to protect you, but look at how they bring war to your skies. We offer you the truth and a chance to join the free worlds in peace." Sarah burst into the UN emergency session, her evidence ready to show. As she looked at the faces of world leaders watching the battle above, she knew this was the moment everything would change. "Listen carefully," she began. "I can prove what's really happening. The Prometheus isn't here to save us. They're here to make us part of their interdimensional empire. But now we have a real choice to make." Outside, the battle raged on, lighting up the sky like a sign that humanity's future hung in the balance. The United Nations Assembly Hall was in chaos as Sarah Chen presented her evidence. On the massive screens behind her, data streams and sensor readings told the true story of the Prometheus, while outside the windows, the battle between dimensions lit up the sky. "Look at these energy signatures," Sarah explained. her voice steady despite her racing heart. The Prometheus isn't using time travel technology. It's using dimensional breach technology. They're from a parallel Earth where humanity became the conquerors of multiple dimensions. Tom operated the computer, showing comparison images. In their dimension, Earth didn't meet aliens peacefully. Instead, they discovered how to invade other Earths. They'd been conquering parallel worlds one by one, adding their technology and resources to their empire. Suddenly, Admiral Harrison's voice boomed through the building speakers. "Dr. Chen is spreading lies. Look outside. We're defending Earth from alien invaders, just as we warned." But Sarah was ready. She played a recovered video file from the Prometheus's own database. The images showed Harrison's Earth, a militaristic empire, with massive fleets of battleships identical to the Prometheus. They were attacking peaceful versions of Earth, using the same trick every time, appearing as saviors before taking control. The UN Secretary General stood up. "If this is true, why are these coalition forces helping us? Why not let us fall into the trap?" A gentle blue light filled the room as a hologram appeared. It showed a being that looked almost human, but with slightly silver skin and eyes that seemed to hold galaxies within them. This was the coalition leader. "Because we were once like you," the coalition leader said, their voice filled with warmth. "Many dimensions ago, a version of the Prometheus came to our world. We discovered the truth too late. Since then, we've dedicated ourselves to protecting other Earths from falling to the Empire." Outside, more Prometheus-class battleships emerged from the rifts. The coalition ships moved in complex patterns, their defensive shields protecting Earth's cities from stray fire. "They're not even shooting to destroy," Sarah pointed out. "Every coalition shot is aimed at weapons and engines only. They're trying to disable, not kill." The evidence was overwhelming. World leaders began making calls, ordering their military forces to stand down from helping the Prometheus. Instead, Earth's defensive systems were turned against Harrison's ships. Enraged, Harrison appeared in person at the UN, storming into the assembly hall with his guards. "You're making a terrible mistake. We offer you power. We offer you the chance to be the conquerors instead of the conquered." "That's why you'll lose," Sarah said, facing him. "You don't understand that true strength comes from peace and unity, not conquest." The coalition ships had formed a perfect defensive sphere around Earth. Their technology was clearly more advanced than even the Prometheus fleet, but they used it with precision and care. "Your empire's time is over, Harrison," the coalition leader announced. "Too many worlds have seen through your deception. Too many dimensions have joined our coalition willingly, sharing knowledge and culture instead of taking it by force." Harrison pulled out a weapon, pointing it at Sarah. "Then we'll start with her. She's ruined everything." But before he could fire, a beam of blue light surrounded him and his guards. Their weapons dissolved into harmless dust. The coalition's technology hadn't just been fighting in space, it had been protecting people on the ground too. "The choice is yours, Harrison," the coalition leader said. "Surrender, or we will be forced to send you back to your dimension and seal it forever." Sarah watched as Harrison's face transformed from rage to fear. Outside, his mighty fleet was being systematically disabled by the precise coalition attacks. The Prometheus, humanity's supposed savior, now looked like what it truly was, a sign of destruction that had failed. "Earth chooses peace," the UN Secretary General announced, standing tall. "We choose to join the coalition of free worlds." As cheers filled the assembly hall, Sarah looked out at the battle above. The truth had finally emerged, and with it came humanity's first real step into a much larger, more wonderful multiverse than they had ever imagined. As Earth celebrated its decision to join the coalition of free worlds, Admiral Harrison made his final desperate move. In the confusion of the UN assembly hall, he pressed a hidden device on his wrist. The Prometheus suddenly released a massive energy pulse that disrupted all communications on Earth. "Did you really think I wouldn't have a backup plan?" Harrison laughed. The Prometheus isn't just a battleship, it's a dimensional anchor. Once activated, it will pull this Earth into perfect alignment with our Empire's dimension. Your coalition won't be able to help them then. Sarah Chen watched in horror as strange energy patterns began spreading across the sky. The coalition ship's shields flickered, struggling against the new force. On her computer screens, dimensional readings went crazy. "Tom, connect me to Dr. Wong at MIT," Sarah shouted. Her assistant worked frantically with their backup communication system. Finally, Wong's voice came through, filled with static. "Sarah, the dimensional barriers are collapsing," Wong said. "If we don't stop this, Earth will be forced into the Empire's dimension permanently." The coalition leader's hologram flickered but stayed strong. "We've seen this weapon before. The Empire used it to capture 3 other Earths. But we've learned from those losses." Coalition ships began moving into a new formation. Their blue energy beams connected, forming a protective web around Earth. But Harrison just smiled. "You don't have enough ships to cover the whole planet," he said. "The anchor effect will break through somewhere." Sarah studied the energy readings on her computer. Something about the pattern looked familiar. "Wait," she said. "This is similar to the temporal radiation we detected when the Prometheus first arrived." She quickly shared her data with the coalition ships. Their leaders' eyes widened in understanding. "Of course, the anchor uses the same technology as their dimensional drives. If we can reverse the polarity." But Harrison was already moving. He grabbed Sarah, pressing a gun to her head. "Nobody moves. I may have lost this Earth, but I can still take humanity's brightest mind back to the Empire." What happened next surprised everyone. Tom, the quiet assistant who had always stayed in the background, suddenly acted. He threw his coffee mug at Harrison's face, causing the Admiral to stumble. Sarah broke free, and coalition energy beams immediately surrounded Harrison, trapping him. "Why?" Harrison demanded, looking at Tom. "You're one of us. You were supposed to be my backup." Tom stepped forward, and his appearance flickered. His human disguise faded, revealing silver skin similar to the coalition members. "I was never one of you. The coalition sent me to protect Dr. Chen, knowing she would be the one to discover the truth." Sarah stared at her assistant in shock. "All this time?" Tom smiled apologetically. "We needed someone brilliant but honest to uncover the Empire's lies naturally. You did better than we could have hoped, Sarah." Outside, the coalition ships had completely surrounded the Prometheus. Using Sarah's data, they modified their energy web. The dimensional anchor began to falter. "No," Harrison shouted. "You don't understand. The Empire is humanity's destiny. We bring order to chaos. You bring only destruction," Sarah said firmly. "And you forgot something important about humanity. We're stronger when we work together, not when we conquer." The coalition leader nodded, "Which is why we never force worlds to join us. We offer help, share knowledge, and let each Earth choose its own path." The Prometheus's energy field was now completely contained. One by one, Harrison's other battleships were pulled back through their dimensional rifts. The coalition's defensive web held firm, protecting Earth from being dragged with them. Sarah turned to Tom, still processing the revelation about her assistant. "Were any of our conversations real?" "All of them," Tom replied. "My mission was to protect you, but your friendship was unexpected and genuine. Like many in the coalition, I've learned that the best things in the multiverse come from honest connections, not deception." As the dimensional disturbances began to fade, Earth's leaders gathered around the coalition leader's hologram. It was time to discuss their planet's new place in a much larger community of worlds. The Prometheus, once a sign of destruction, now served as a reminder of the path they hadn't chosen. Above them, coalition ships maintained their protective formation, their blue light a symbol of hope rather than conquest. 3 days after the Great Battle, Sarah Chen stood in her laboratory beneath Geneva, working on her most important project yet. The Prometheus still hung in Earth's orbit, now surrounded by coalition ships. Its dimensional drive was damaged but not destroyed, and that made it dangerous. The Empire won't give up, Tom explained, his true coalition form now visible. His silver skin glowed softly in the lab's dim light. They've lost ships before, but the Prometheus is special. It can still open dimensional pathways. Sarah nodded, her fingers flying over her keyboard. That's why we need to end this permanently. No more parallel Earths should face this threat. On her screens, complex calculations showed how the Prometheus's dimensional drive could be overloaded. The coalition leader appeared in hologram form beside them, studying the data. Your plan is brilliant, Dr. Chen, they said, but the cost will be high. It will seal off this entire branch of dimensional pathways. Earth will be cut off from dimensional travel forever, including from the coalition. Tom added quietly. Sarah took a deep breath. It's the only way to make sure the Empire never returns. We have to close the door permanently. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Harrison, who had been held in a coalition energy cell, had somehow broken free. On the security cameras, they watched him fight his way toward the facility's communication center. He's trying to contact the Empire. Tom moved toward the door, but Sarah grabbed his arm. No, this is perfect, she said, her eyes shining with sudden understanding. Let him send the signal. In fact, help me boost it. The coalition leader understood immediately. Of course, when the Empire opens a dimensional rift to rescue him, we can use their own gateway to trigger the cascade. Sarah finished. The dimensional barriers will collapse inward instead of outward. Earth will be safe, and the Empire will lose their pathway to all the parallel worlds in this branch of reality. They worked quickly, modifying their equipment. Outside, coalition ships moved into position. Harrison had reached the communication center and was broadcasting a powerful distress signal into dimensional space. Signal detected, Tom announced. Multiple Empire ships preparing to breach. Sarah looked at her friend, knowing this would be their last mission together. The coalition needs to withdraw to a safe distance. Once this starts, anyone too close will be trapped here. Tom hesitated. Sarah, I know, she smiled. You were the best assistant and friend I could have asked for. Now go. Help protect other Earths. The coalition ships began retreating, all except one small vessel that landed to collect Tom. The sky rippled as Empire battleships began emerging through dimensional rifts. Now, Sarah shouted, activating her device. The Prometheus's damaged dimensional drive reacted with the Empire's rifts. Energy cascaded between them, creating a chain reaction. The Empire ships tried to retreat, but it was too late. Reality itself seemed to fold, sealing the pathways between dimensions. Harrison burst into the lab, his face contorted with rage. What have you done? Saved countless worlds, Sarah replied calmly, including yours, though you don't deserve it. You'll never be able to invade another Earth again. Through the windows, they watched as the last coalition ships vanished beyond the dimensional barrier. Tom's final message came through. Earth is not alone. You've joined a great family of worlds, even if we can no longer reach each other. Make it count. The Prometheus, the ship that had arrived like a sign of destruction, broke apart in orbit as the dimensional energies consumed it. Its pieces burned up in the atmosphere, creating a beautiful light show, like stars falling to Earth. 1 week later, Sarah stood at her old monitoring station in Tokyo. The world was different now. Nations were working together, sharing the knowledge the coalition had left them. Earth's first steps into a larger universe had been dramatic, but they had chosen the right path. On her desk sat a small silver device. Tom's last gift. It couldn't pierce the dimensional barriers, but it contained vast libraries of knowledge from countless peaceful Earths. A note attached read, "To help guide your way among the stars. Your friends in the coalition." Sarah picked up the device, smiling. The Prometheus had indeed been a sign, not of destruction, but of a choice. Humanity had chosen cooperation over conquest, peace over power. And somewhere, across the dimensional barriers, she knew other worlds were making the same choice. Looking up at the night sky, now forever changed, Sarah began to plan Earth's next chapter. The stars waited, and humanity would reach them together.